Hello, Litera TV viewers. I'm Barrett Leider. I'm a Scrum Master who works with engineers at Litera. Thank you for joining us today on Litera TV. I'm excited to speak with the head of my team, Manager of Program Management, Kim Hassan. Hello, Kim.
Hi, Barrett. I'm excited to do this episode of Litera TV with you today.
Me too. In this session, I thought we'd spend a little time talking about how engineers at Litera think about and develop technology for the legal market. So this is both specifically from the perspective of the engineers and those on our team who work behind the scenes with the engineers to create that technology. So Kim, can you give us a little background on your time with Litera?
Absolutely. So for those that don't know the history of Litera, it's made up of several companies that have all merged together and joined forces to create the best-in-class products for the legal market. When I started with Litera, I was actually with the microsystems family first, and I joined there as part of the customer support team. And this was really my first exposure to the legal market. So I had an opportunity to work with the support staff at law firms, as well as with lawyers directly. And this gave me, this was really insightful for me. I was able to see the challenges that these lawyers are facing on a daily basis as they're trying to draft their documents. They just want to focus on writing the content, but instead they get blocked by obstacles that can cause them, frustration and distract them from focusing on what matters to them. So I really got an appreciation for what they do and what our products do. I worked in support for a couple of years. Then I moved over to the engineering team. I wanted to work closer with the technology and with the engineers. And so now at Litera, I oversee the software development lifecycle for the engineering department.
Awesome. What's the focus of your role and the program management team at Litera?
So my focus and the focus of the program management team is to help the teams within engineering focus on developing and delivering high quality software that meets the needs of the market. And we do this in a consistent, efficient, and transparent way.
I know that we have 13 teams that simultaneously are developing and delivering this software. So I know there are a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah, there are. We have, as you said, 13 teams working simultaneously to deliver software. So it's really important that we have a process and structure in place that they can follow. We use the known Scrum Framework in order to design, develop, test, and deliver the software or value in short amount of time. We ensure transparency with the rest of the organization, so there's always a chance for stakeholders to review and provide feedback on what the engineering team is doing. Teams can then quickly adapt. So if we get feedback and realize, okay, what we're doing is not quite right, we can take that feedback. We use it as an opportunity to correct course and to improve on what we're building.
I see this as very wise and advantageous kind of to see the changing landscape as an opportunity rather than a liability. And I know that kind of speaks to the value of Scrum. Some of our viewers probably aren't familiar with Scrum, so should we take a few minutes maybe and talk about the Scrum Framework?
I think that's a good idea. So Scrum is pretty well known within the software development community. It's the idea that you have a self-organizing cross-functional team that's working together towards a common goal. The term Scrum itself comes from rugby, and this is where it's the idea of you have this team joining together, heads down. They're moving as a single unit to get possession of a ball and move it down the field. So we kind of look at our team sort of that same way.
I can definitely see that. I know that in the engineering department, our self-organizing teams are like the trusted units and really the strength of the department.
Yeah, we want our teams to feel like they're empowered. We want our teams to have the ability to make their own decisions, to work together as that single unit. So they're responsible for creating the work or developing the work, I should say. So they should feel empowered to make the decisions with regards to how much work they can accomplish, how they're going to accomplish the work. They should have all the resources within the team to get the job done. Scrum emphasizes several core values that I think really make a team successful. There's 5 of them. It's focus, openness, respect, courage, and commitment. And a strong Scrum team really embraces all of these core values. If we talk about each one of them, focus, for example, the team should be able to focus on what they're doing. They should be able to avoid outside distractions. And this is part of where the program management team can really step in and help them. The team should be open with each other. They should be able to have conversations and speak freely. They should respect one another. They should have the courage to talk about their own weaknesses, to ask for help, to admit faults, to lean on each other, when they need to. And they should hold each other accountable for the commitment. So they're working together as one team towards a set of goals. They're committing to the work together. So they should, hold each other accountable for the commitments. So it really is about teams acting as teams and supporting each other to meet common goals.
I can totally see the importance of those values that you mentioned. I know that when they're at play, our teams are just highly, highly effective.
Yeah, I think the core values are so important for the interactions between the team members. Scrum has been successful for us, partly because of those core values, but also because there are concepts in Scrum that are pretty important as well. So there's 3 of them. It's adaptation, inspection, and transparency. And so if a team has all the right, core values and they're working on those core values, then they can focus on these other things to make sure that they're developing or delivering things in a way that, works for everybody. So the team, when we talk about the adaptation, inspection, and transparency, teams, while they are following a process, they're following a process that helps give us some structure and some guidance. The process does allow for adaptation. There's also inspection throughout the process. So are we building the right things? Is the team itself working the best, that it can? So these are all opportunities, for the team to improve both on what they're building and how they're working together. And of course, that doesn't work if you don't have transparency. So everything's transparent, the team working together, there's team showing off, what they're doing to the rest of the organization, to the stakeholders. So, and part of that is just the team talking about like what's working, what's not working. Have we met our goals? Have we not met our goals?
So I can see how these kind of Scrum values for interaction, like focus, openness, respect, like you said, really make the team well equipped to do their work. And then Scrum also brings them kind of the ability to inspect with transparency, to adapt, and basically I see them as like improving the product and the team with each sprint. Exactly.
That's part of the goal is what can we do along the way? What can we do to not only improve the product? I mean, that's a given. We have to make sure we're creating the best things for our customers. So what can we do to improve that? And also it's the team reflecting on themselves. What can we do to be more efficient, to get things done faster? So it's definitely both of those things.
Mm-hmm. It seems valuable for sure. So when engineers move through this process and they meet goals related to our software, what actually goes into developing the right software for the user? What kind of thinking are the engineers doing around developing legal software specifically?
That's a great question. When it comes to developing legal, software for the legal industry and developing the right thing, we have to make sure that we have a clear understanding of the problems that we're trying to solve for the users. So it would be fun, for the engineers if they could just develop the thing that they thought was cool or the thing that they thought was, hey, this is cutting edge, this looks great. And that sounds good. But of course, for the end user, for the lawyer, that's not really what they need or what they even want. They need solutions that are, solutions to barriers that keep them from focusing on the content that they're writing. So we're always asking the question, the engineering team, whether you're the engineer or the quality assurance engineer, we should always be asking, what is that problem that we're trying to solve and making sure that we have a clear answer to that. When I also think about developing the right thing, a lot of it is with, how does the software work for the user? Like, what does it look like? We have to make sure that we're giving the most intuitive user experience. Lawyers are busy people. They don't have time to figure out how to use an application, how to use the software, how does it work? So we're challenged with coming up with something that fits seamlessly into their workflow. It just works for them the first time they use it. First impressions can make or break a feature or a product. If they use it the first time and it doesn't make sense, they're not going to go back to it. So if we get it right the first time, then we'll have a much higher success rate. We also have to, we're thinking about, we're creating these complex systems, but they have to appear super simple, easy to use. We mentioned, being intuitive. And so that can be hard to do. We're challenging the engineers with that, I think, every day as they're creating things. And it's the thinking like that inspired us to create DocX Tools Companion. This is one of our products that has one-click button solutions for lawyers. So they can click a button if they need to, add numbering to their document. They can click another button if they need to put like a table of contents in the document.
So it sounds like engineers have quite a lot to consider, basically. It sounds like there's this other layer of challenge that goes into, making this very, very robust software, but that appears very navigable and easy to use for busy lawyers who don't have time to kind of learn how to pick all that up. That really sounds like a lot to consider. You've got the experience of the user, you have the technology and the code that's actually behind that product. And then also, teams have to think about their work and how to break it down and accomplish it in increments. What is I know product is involved in that as well. What is their role in this process?
So engineering and the product management team work hand in hand together. We rely on product management to tell us what the problems are that we're trying to solve. They tell us what workflows we need to support, what the end user experience should be. So we rely on them heavily for all of this stuff. They're out there talking to the customers. They're researching the trends in the market, what's happening in the legal space. And then they're collecting all of that information and feeding it back to us. So we're dependent on them to create and define for us what it is that the engineering team should be focused on. And of course, then we have checks in place, like, okay, they asked us to create this. Did we create the right thing? Is it solving the right problem? Did we meet their expectations? And do they feel that we've met the expectations of the customers too?
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like product and engineering are definitely, they work hand in hand and definitely think about the user experience together. I imagine that they probably have to get pretty inventive frequently coming up with solutions. What kind of challenges do they face in that arena?
Challenges. So there's a lot of challenges, and I think there's a handful that come to mind. It's funny, in the beginning, we talked about Litera being, this company where we had multiple companies within the legal space all join forces together to create, things for the legal market. Well, as those companies were coming together, when the engineers started to meet one another and get, talking to each other, it's funny how they were all sharing similar stories, similar experiences, similar challenges within the space that we're in. So some of those challenges come from integrating with third-party applications, such as a document management system or Microsoft Word. So much of what the lawyer does is inside Word. This is where they want to spend their time creating the right content. But when you're bound by some other third-party application, such as Word, there can be barriers around that. And not to go too technical, but things like, automating functions inside of Word, you're bound by whatever Word can support. And so whether you're working with the object model in Word or the XML structure, there's limitations. And so you're always trying to work around things. And you'll get the engineers talking back and forth like, yeah, we tried to do this in Word and we couldn't do that. So we had to come up with this, this workaround instead. And it's funny how they're like, oh my gosh, we did that same thing. So there's definitely, they share similar experiences with those types of challenges. Another challenge that comes to mind is just the cost, I think, that any software company has is in dealing with maintenance of software. So you're always wanting to work on new features, and it's a challenge to like stop yourself and say, okay, wait, we're going to pause for a second and we're going to address some maintenance that we have to do. You can almost think of it like buying a car or buying a house. You buy this new thing and it's great, but you need to do, you need to do some maintenance to keep things running smoothly. And technology is sort of that same way. So technology does get outdated. There's opportunities to remodel. There's always faster and better ways. People are coming up with new things every day, so new ways of doing things. And sometimes we have to put innovation on hold in order to, address some maintenance things. And if we go with that car analogy, it's like, we got to change the oil or we got to replace the tires. So
that makes total sense. And I imagine there are probably challenges that are specific to law firms or specific to those types of users that they have to get inventive around too.
Definitely. So some of the challenges that come to mind, I'd say being in the legal space, we talked a little bit about time already, and that lawyers don't have time to learn software. So time is definitely something that I'd say is a challenge, because we want to get their time to do betas, for example. We created something maybe brand new and we'd like to get them to look at it, and we don't always get that time. So similar to that would be the ability for them to upgrade our software or deploy new updates to their users. That takes time. It comes at a cost to them. They need IT resources and time to be able to push out new releases to their end users. So things like that. We're creating updates all the time. We've got planned releases. We've got, sometimes it's just, we found an issue, let's get a fix out to a customer. So we have all these, releases that we'd like to get out, but sometimes we can't always get those into the hands of the users quite yet.
Right. So when we do, when we kind of do align with law firms and we get insights into what firms want or what the markets want, how do we deliver that? Like, I know the process that we use at Litera is iterative. How do we look at these potential improvements and actually plan them?
I'd say we carefully plan our releases, and the frequency varies depending on the type of product. So Litera Transact, this is a product that's a cloud-based SaaS type solution, and there's not a lot of burden on a firm to deploy any updates. So this is something that we can schedule, for example, monthly releases for and get those updates out, and there's not much of an impact on the law firms themselves. For desktop applications, it's a little bit different. Those releases usually are a little bit further apart, probably quarterly. And engineering is working very closely with product to scope the release, set the date of the release. And as you mentioned, it's a very iterative process. So throughout a release cycle, engineering, we have these short development cycles. We call them sprints. So within a sprint, the team is planning, here's what we're going to do. They're doing the work, and then they're reviewing it afterwards. So because we have these short cycles, these short dev cycles, while we do have a planned release after, let's say, 3 or 4 of these cycles, if we decide, there's something we just want to get out sooner, the process supports that. So because it's this iterative, we can kind of step in at some point and say, okay, let's pause here and let's get something out, so we can release much faster if we need to.
Mm-hmm. So I can see how the iterative nature of the work kind of ties well with what you mentioned earlier about how change is kind of seen as an opportunity or an advantage at Litera. Like, we kind of have this ability to pivot more quickly, maybe.
Yep.
I was wondering if, like, when there is a sudden change to the landscape like this, we find ourselves answering to new demands. How specifically do we respond and think about those opportunities?
Sure. Customer support is a top one of the, if not the most important thing at Litera. And our process allows us to plan work, but also adjust it and disrupt that planned work quickly if we need to, in order to get something out for a customer. So I mentioned that we have these sprints, and these are 2-week cycles. So it's a 2-week cycle where we're planning our work, we're doing the work, we're testing it, we're reviewing it. And then at the end of that cycle, we start the next one. So every 2 weeks, we're evaluating the priorities and are we working on the right thing? So because of that process that we have in place, if we needed to say, okay, the next sprint's coming up, what are we working on now? And the thing that's top priority today maybe wasn't the thing that was top priority, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. So having those cycles really gives us the flexibility to be able to support our customers and give them updates or releases more quickly if we need to.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about teams planning and, you know, focusing on this work, yet staying flexible to pivot like that if they need to, and also, you know, flexible to support the customer however they need in the moment. So when we are moving that quickly, you know, when we're making those kinds of changes on the fly, which I really think is so cool and such an advantage for us, how do we make sure that, you know, if we're suddenly working on something new and different, how do we make sure that it's going to meet our quality standards? You know, and I know that we have process changes too. So like, if you know, if the process changes, how do we make sure that the resulting software is still of the quality we require?
So we mentioned customer support being a top priority, and I think quality is just up there with that as well. There are several checkpoints that are built in with, you know, within the development or the engineering process that ensure that we're producing work that meets our standards. For example, so engineering is doing unit testing. We've got the quality assurance team that's doing both manual and automated testing with our products. There's also code scans we have in place and health monitoring in place. And so these are all mechanisms that we're using to ensure the quality of the product. We also mentioned, you know, we work closely with the product management team. And so we have the checkpoints to say, did we develop the right software? So not only are we checking to make sure it's working the way that we've designed it, but also did we really develop, you know, something that's providing a lot of high quality value to our customers. And we mentioned, you know, we talked about the iterative process and we talked about wanting to improve the process as well. So we have checkpoints within the process to say what's working, what's not, both from our, you know, a team and people perspective as well. So we want to ensure not only the quality with the products, but our team, you know, is the team happy? Is the team able to work together and get things done in an efficient way? And program management, so that's sort of what we're here for. The program management team is really here to help support the process and to support the people. And if we can help better that, you know, that's what will help the teams do.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is just making me realize that kind of the hallmark or the main goal of the program management team basically is to, you know, implement this process in such a way that it is nearly, that it colors the work that the engineers do, but it doesn't get in the way of the work that they do, which actually sounds like a really difficult balance to strike. You know, you have to kind of make changes to the process in the background all the time.
Yeah, we have retrospectives. So the teams themselves will sit down and talk about what's working, what's not working, what do we want to improve. The program management team also has their own, you know, discussions. What's working for this team? Is it working for that team? We mentioned the 13 teams that we have like working simultaneously. So something might work for one team, doesn't quite work for another team. So it's this constant, you know, monitoring and making small changes. So we talk about adaptation. Scrum is a framework that supports the agile methodology, which is sort of the, I'd say, bigger picture here too, is that we want to be agile. We want to be able to adapt and change quickly if we need to. I think if we look at the program management team, they're really here to help support the engineers so that the engineers can focus on what they do best. And it's similar to, you know, our goal in creating products for our lawyers is to create these products so that lawyers can focus on what they do best.
So, okay, that's actually kind of that's a cool parallel, kind of, that, you know, just how we help them focus on what's important. That's kind of what our products do for lawyers as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy there.
Well, throughout this conversation, you've given us a great breakdown of the types of thinking and problem solving that engineers do, and also how program management owns the process and kind of allows for this consistency and simultaneous flexibility.
Yeah, I think that the teams that we have are just so, they're working so hard to get things done, and by having the program management team there to support them and take away, one of the goals of the team is not only do we help with the process and making sure that things are running smoothly for the team, but we also remove roadblocks for the team. We act as a spokesperson for the team. So these are all just little things that the program management team can do to really help the engineers be successful. So I hope that this gives kind of everybody just a little bit of insight into some of the things that happen in the background within engineering. We think of engineering as just creating the product, testing the product, but we've got sort of this other team here as well, helping to support them, and so that they can really focus on what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. I appreciate you walking us through this today, how engineering thinks and how program management supports the team.
Yeah, thanks for meeting with me today. And I think this was a good conversation, and hopefully everybody kind of got some insights there. And I appreciate your time and talking with you today.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
Have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye.